All right, here we go. Welcome into the show. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now. I'm Chase Senior. Happy Sunday to everybody, and happy President's Day as well. Hope all of you have been having a fantastic weekend, and it's an extended one for many. If you have off on Monday, hopefully you have some good plans. Coming up here on the show, should the Eagles sign Eddie Jackson in free agency after he was let go by the Chicago Bears? Some interesting stuff on this front. Player that thrived under Vic Fangio in 2018 with the Chicago Bears, former All-Pro with the pedigree, a little bit older but very affordable. That's right in line with what Howie Roseman looks like. But first, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Daily and year-round coverage of the Birds. This is a massive offseason for this football team. Going into 2024, we have you covered every step of the way. As for the latest on Eddie Jackson here, 7 seasons with the Chicago Bears where he became just a franchise icon for that organization. Released by the team on Thursday, going into 2024 NFL free agency. This is a move for Chicago that's in a really good spot. Number 1 overall pick, another first rounder of their own in this draft, most cap space in the National Football League, and for Jackson, carried a cap hit going into 2024 of $18.1 million. So one of the highest paid safeties in the National Football League, and the Bears, in making this move of cutting him, saved $12.5 million of some cap space. Now, why are we discussing this on Eagles Now? I kind of teased it a little bit earlier. That's what we call it in the business. But the Eagles, as we know, have a need at the safety position. You have Reed Blankenship, Kevin Byard, Sidney Brown coming off a torn ACL. If you cut Byard, you save between $13, $14 million for a guy who you traded for at the deadline, played okay football. It's hard to gauge how well some of these defensive players did play because the scheme was so awful under Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. But for an aging player, you cut him, you free up $13, $14 million. That's, of course, notable. And Howie oftentimes doesn't pay big-time dollars to safeties. And Eddie Jackson should come at an affordable price. The Eagles, going into 2023, 32nd in spending at the safety spot, dead last in the NFL. And for Eddie Jackson, one of, if not, the best seasons of his career was back in 2018 when Vic Fangio was the Bears defensive coordinator. Jackson that year was special, and I'm talking special. Arguably the best safety in the NFL as well. That was the double dunk season. Thank you, Cody Parkey. Eagles able to get the playoff dub because of that. 14 games for Jackson that year, 2 touchdowns. Big play threat, 15 pass breakups as a safety. That number is almost unheard of at the safety spot because you're playing at that deep third level. And Jackson, that's kind of been a strength of his throughout his career, diagnosing plays, reading the eyes of the quarterback, having that athleticism in that burst, quick area explosiveness to make a jump for the football, having good ball awareness while the ball is in the air. 15 pass breakups that year is just terrific. Played a little bit around the line of scrimmage, 1 sack, 6 picks, 2 TFLs. He's a first-team All-Pro that year. And what I love about how Vic Fangio used him was he used him as a chess piece on the defense. And I think it's so important to have a safety who can play in that manner. Malcolm Jenkins, Brian Dawkins. We saw it a little bit from C.J. Gardner-Johnson. The best Eagles teams have come when they've had really good safeties, right? And Eddie Jackson is a player who you can just kind of play anywhere. He's very malleable. He's very versatile. And in 2019, he was also a Pro Bowl player. The issue with him is that, and you could sign him to a new deal because he was cut by Chicago. None of that money carries over. No Pro Bowls or All-Pro since. He's played 12 games in 2022, 2023. He's going into his age 31 season. And in 2022, he suffered a season-ending Liz Frank injury during a Week 12 loss to the New York Jets. So you combine all of those things, and the play, the athleticism, it's declining a little bit. But there are some underlying strengths here and advantages of making a move like this. Last year, before the Liz Frank injury, he led the Bears in tackles, and he was leading all NFC free safeties in votes for the Pro Bowl at the time of his injury. So 2022, he played good football up until that injury, and I get it, hasn't been an All-Pro since 2018. We're now sitting here on February 18, 2024. A lot of time has passed since then. But then once he recovers from that Liz Frank injury, which is always a serious injury for any athlete, any sport, I thought the last month of the year, Eddie Jackson started to play pretty good football outside of the Packers game, in which he certainly struggled. Numbers overall this year, 37 tackles, 5 pass breakups, 1 pick, Pro Football Focus grade of 58.6, not great, and a quarterback rating when targeted of 121.1. So those numbers, not exceptional, but again, last month, once he started to regain some of that speed, regain some of that health, I thought he looked more so like a borderline Pro Bowl player as compared to a player who's completely washed. I think Eddie Jackson can start in the National Football League. And would he be a better option at the safety position for Philadelphia? You have Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, Kevin Byard under contract. We'll see what happens with Byard. $14 million, it's a lot of money to pay a former 2-time All-Pro whose best days are behind him. Played decent ball. What he did against Travis Kelce in prime time as the Eagles exacted revenge, pretty impressive. But, again, up and down moments for Byard. I like Sidney Brown a lot. He's coming off the ACL. You just never know with that injury nowadays. At the very least, you can sign Eddie Jackson to an affordable contract to be spot starter, possible starter, if not a backup depth piece. And you could certainly do worse than that. You'll have to see what the market is, of course, because he could have suitors in free agency. He could be guaranteed a starting job with another team. But what does Eddie Jackson want? Age 31 season. He's already been named a 2-time Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro once in his career. Does he want to get back to playing at a high level? Does he want to play for a defensive coordinator who he knows well, has familiarity with, and play good football under in Vic Fangio? Does he want an opportunity to win a Super Bowl championship on an Eagles team that is still extremely talented and is top 10 in Super Bowl odds, which I think people are sleeping on the Eagles a little bit, and they're doing that because of how they ended the season. Like the hiring of Kellen Moore, like the hiring of Vic Fangio. This is an Eagles team that's still really talented. I believe in Nick Sirianni. Does Eddie Jackson see it the same, where DC that he thrived under, a team that has a shot, and an opportunity to play a lot while making maybe some decent coin? For the Eagles, there will be other NFL free agent safeties who are available in free agency that could be the apple of their eye and could be appealing to them. It all comes down to what Howie Roseman is willing to pay them. Again, Eagles going into 2023, 32nd in safety spending in the NFL. And at linebacker, 31st. Unacceptable. 2022, they were 28th and 29th linebacker and safety and positional spending. So this is a position that Howie Roseman often doesn't splurge on. But we saw how many issues there were at the second and third levels of this defense. Linebacker, safety have to be a need for Philadelphia. What route will they go? Cheap veteran like Eddie Jackson, or are you going to pay top dollar for a free agent like Antoine Winfield, who's a franchise tag candidate, but an exceptional, still young player in his mid-20s? Kyle Duggar, player that Bill Belichick absolutely loved. Cameron Curl is a guy who I really like. Isn't yet 25, played for the Commanders at a really high level, and a player who's ascending, who you might be able to get on a really team-friendly deal, still worth a good price because of his play, but you're not going to have to pay an Antoine Winfield type of salary. Xavier McKinney, another good player. Jordan Fuller, and then Geno Stone of the Baltimore Ravens, who that organization does such a great job of developing secondary members, whether they be corners or safeties. Geno Stone, another really good player under Mike Macdonald last year. Mike Macdonald, now the new head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. From Ed Reed to Kyle Hamilton, they've done work with safeties. Geno Stone, a recent example of that. So certainly an interesting conversation to have going into free agency for the Eagles, and one that we're going to have to remember with free agency coming up in March, NFL Combine later this month, NFL Draft at the end of April. Because it makes sense for a lot of those reasons that we talked about on the show. Does Eddie Jackson to the Eagles? All right. Hope all of you have a fantastic weekend. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back tomorrow with more content. That's why you subscribe, because this is your go-to spot for year-round and daily coverage of the Birds.